back, everyone, to the Talk of Louisville. I'm Mike and Kellye.
I'm Kellye Duckworth.
Kellye, weekend, how was it?
It was good.
Heard you was planting grass over there.
Oh my gosh. Don't call me for any landscaping needs.
No green thumb?
No. I thought I was doing the right thing. I just thought you threw the seeds down and watered it and grass came.
Hey, you're close.
I mean.
At least you got them on the ground.
Yeah,
you got to till it up, get it under the soil, get it wet, but we'll take care of it. I need to, on the way here, stop and see about getting that power seeder. So
yeah, I have a good neighbor, guys.
Yeah, I don't have much more time, but for some reason, I got rid of the rental property. I've been playing in the yard more, which I'd never thought I would do. I guess what happens to old people.
Speaking of yards, who's our sponsor today?
Speaking of yards, our sponsor friend today, Jig's Fruit Market. If you're not familiar with Jig's, they got everything you need for your yard. I know before my mom passed many, many years ago, we would go there to get her Mother's Day flowers. So a lot of people shopped yesterday for Easter, but if you're looking for things for the garden, they actually have vegetables, oranges, tomatoes. They actually have some steaks, some frozen steaks, but their primary function is their plants. People go there for their gardens. They got tomato plants, pre-grown seeds. Check them out. Jig's Fruit Market on Valley Station Road, locally owned and fabulous people.
I saw they had a bunch of flowers out there today, sitting by the road.
Did you stop by and get some?
I didn't, not yet. I'm going to wait until you do it. That's what I do.
We went after you all left and got a few flowers. They closed at 6. We got there right before they closed. But yeah, I got quite a few things. So
I'm not very good with flowers either. So
yeah, we need some new flower pots. So if anybody knows that since Big Lots closed, there's no good place to get cheap flower pots. So.
And hopefully everybody had a good Easter.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Special guest today, Mr. Jeff Callaway. How's it going, Jeff?
I'm doing great. Thanks.
I'm sure most people know Jeff with Ethan Almighty. I think it goes without saying, might be one of the most famous dogs in the country. Is that correct?
He gets recognized a lot. But, and in your defense, when you have so many dogs in the backyard, you just throw the grass seed down. I mean, because
they pack it down.
There you go.
Well, we need to take Ethan over to your house before we leave. Have him run around in the backyard.
A 5-pound Chihuahua doesn't do much for that.
So Jeff, most famous dog, and I'm sure some people know, obviously people know of Ethan, but I bet they don't know the story and what happened and how you came across Ethan. Would you mind maybe kind of leaning into that a little bit?
Yeah, so January 29th of 2021, I was working at the animal shelter, and someone called and said, somebody dropped a dead dog off in the parking lot. Would you check the cameras and see if you can figure out who it is? So I was about 5 minutes away, so I drove there. I get on, I check the cameras. You see the car that drops him off, and then they pull away. But then rumor was sort of through the rumor mill that through the shelter, that he was still alive. So I popped my head into the vet area, and that was really the first time that I had seen Ethan. He was kind of up on a table. They were trying to get an IV needle into him. He had been dumped in the parking lot. It was about 25 degrees that day. And then there was a family dropping off donations, a mom, a dad, and a little boy. And they had gone to the back, dropped off the donations. They were driving back through the parking lot, and the little boy sees him laying in the parking lot. And if you watch the camera, there are 2 cars that drive by that don't stop. So they probably don't see him laying there. But the little boy sees him, says something to his mom. She stops the car. They get out, and then it's during COVID, so the building's not open. So they go to the front door and call. And someone from the shelter runs out, scoops him up, takes him in to the vet area. And at that time, they think, why are you bringing a dead dog in here? Because he couldn't lift his head. He was just a bag of bones.
You could tell he was breathing, but that was about it.
Well, they didn't even see that at the time. She'll tell you that later that her first thought was, why are you bringing a dead dog in?
Yeah.
And then she saw him take a breath. And so she immediately started working on him. So I saw him up there on the table and just thought, that's my dog. There was just something about it. It's hard to kind of put into words. I just thought, he's my dog. And as I started checking on him later on, they told me that they named him Ethan. And she told me, she said, he's not going to make it. I mean, she said I'm going to say less than 10% chance, but probably less than that. And I said, that's okay. He's my dog. He's going to know that somebody cares about him before he dies. And so it sort of just all started just with our family had rescued all of our dogs are rescue dogs anyway. We just did it on our own little personal kind of scale. And it just started as, this is just another dog that we're going to hopefully rescue. Hopefully he's going to live, bring into our home as long as he gets along with our other animals. He ended up he went home with a vet tech that night on an IV, and he started seizing in the middle of the night. And so she rushed him to the hospital, and he spent about 5 days in the hospital before he came back to the shelter. And then that's when, over that period of time, I was still texting with the vet. She worked at that hospital and was telling me that there were periods he wasn't doing well.
Right.
She had to go in to show them how to feed him because he couldn't lift his head, couldn't eat on his own. You had to get in and kind of lift his head up a certain way. She had to go off on her own and get special fluids for him. And so there were several different times that a couple of vets said, maybe it's time to let him go. And, she'll tell you that, the vet, she'll tell you that she just kept thinking there's something about this dog. I don't know what it is, but there's something about this dog. And when I come back, he gets just slightly better. And as long as I can see him getting slightly better, then I feel okay with it. And he got better, and the rest is sort of history. He sort of had this following that I wanted to keep going because I wanted to give back to all the people that had supported them through, whether it was financial donations or just support online or sharing his story, whatever it was. I kind of wanted to give back to them and let them know how he was doing. And that was really it. And then, he won this national contest to be the chief tasting officer for Bush Dog Brew, Bush Beer Dog Brew. And that was really the first time that I sort of thought there was something else there.
Yeah.
I had gotten cards and letters from people all over the world, really, telling me about how his story has inspired them. But when I saw what had happened online, and I entered him just because I thought it would be cool to see his picture on their website. I just thought, hey, this is going to be pretty neat. And then I thought, okay, there's something else there, and we could use his story to really make a difference.
But I know there's certain things that you don't like to talk about with his situation, but was he abused? I mean, was he just left and tied to a tree in somebody's yard? Or?
So over the course of like the next 2 years, I probably had 2 different people come to me with the same story of where he came from.
Right.
He was sold as a Presa Canario puppy.
What's that mean?
It's just a Spanish Mastiff.
Oh, okay.
And there's 2 kind of big kind of Presa Canario breeders in Louisville. My guess is he probably came from a litter there. But he was sold as a Presa Canario puppy. He was traded for drugs. And then that person began to abuse him. And so he was about 8 or 9 months old when he was dropped off. So the first 8 or 9 months of his life were horrific. But I kind of like to say that, his story, his message has always been about kindness, but the story started with one act of kindness. There was a lady that knew where he was and the condition he was in. And when that guy wasn't there, she went and took him.
So she saved his life.
She saved his life. Yeah. She took him home and said, I'm going to help this dog. He was covered in feces and urine and dirt. And the first thing she did was douse him in Dawn dishwashing liquid, and then thought, his dog is going to die. This dog is much worse than I thought. He's going to die any minute in my house. I need to do something with him. So she scooped him up, brought him to the shelter, and left him in the parking lot. And while it'd been nice had she called to let somebody know she was there, she did save his life. He wouldn't have made it another day. And in all honesty, that's the one person in the story that I don't know, is the lady that dropped him off. But I know that she went there on a day that guy wasn't there because she was scared of him. And she didn't want him to know that it was her that did it.
Have you ever met her?
I've not met her. I've met somebody that knows her.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. I've met somebody that knows
I'm sure
her.
she's watching from the outside.
And it was in Bullitt County.
Yeah.
But so she saved his life, no matter what he had gone through before that, she saved his life. And then Tatum, who's a little boy that was in the car, also saved his life because another car doesn't drive by for another couple hours, and he wouldn't have made it in the cold out there. And so we I sort of know sort of his background there. And then a couple months after we adopted him, he started having seizures. So we took him for an MRI of his brain, and he had some lesions that were specifically caused from the starvation and dehydration. But he also had other brain damage caused from blunt force trauma, where he'd been hit in the head. And so the stories sort of started coming more together.
There's some freaking evil people out there. I mean, you always hear that serial killers start out abusing animals. It kind of makes you wonder what type of people that had him tied to a tree. It's horrible.
Y'all can't tell, but he's just pacing around the room after eating his bone for 20 minutes.
So being that kind of abuse, most animals will defend themselves. He's such a big dog, but he's very mild and docile. I would imagine he knows that you were there to help him, and has he ever tried to fight back or just laid there because he knew y'all were taking care of him?
No, I get his personality. I give him all the credit for it. He has, Dr. Bewley has said that she has told me before, because as we have now, you get further down the road and you start helping other animals. I've gone to her and I've said, these other animals that we're going to help or that have gone through this abuse, they didn't make it. Like, what was different about him? And she said, she has said to me, I would love to tell you that I did something medically to save him. He shouldn't be alive. He has the strongest heart of any dog I've ever seen. And no matter what happened to him, his heart just kept beating. And so he just needed someone. He wanted to live. Yeah. And he just needed somebody to give him a second chance. And the lady that saved him gave him a second chance. Tatum gave him a second chance. The team at the shelter just had, they were skilled enough that they knew what to do. He ended up at a really good hospital where they took care of him. And he's always just sort of just giving back. And I can take him to schools. I can take him to memory care centers and assisted living places. And he just kind of knows people think I'm crazy. He just kind of knows his mission. We just got back from being out of town where we took 6 flights. And he is better behaved on the flight than most people.
Or kids.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I mean, he is so, it's really amazing. No, he just kind of rolls with whatever you throw at him. He just kind of takes it and goes with it.
Yeah. And it's unreal given what he went through. You said he was a puppy when she brought him. How old was he?
He was it was hard to tell at the very beginning because he was so malnourished. So, I think even at the beginning, they said he was probably a couple years old. But as he started getting a little bit better, they realized he was much younger. And, before we adopted him, they neutered him and he had 2 little baby teeth that he still had that she went ahead and pulled.
Really?
Yeah. So he was about 8 or 9 months old as a mastiff puppy. So he should have been 85 or 90 pounds, and he was 38 pounds.
Gosh.
Yeah, that's crazy. So you said all these people gave him a second chance at life. We had some legislators that you had reached out to and contacted and is starting to give animals in Kentucky a second chance at life. Y'all were very successful in having a bill passed recently. Is that correct?
Yeah. So 2021, right when he was found, I had someone reach out to me and ask if I would be willing to help out with an animal abuse bill. So and I didn't know, 2021, I didn't even know how you wrote a bill. I don't know how.
Yeah, I don't either.
I didn't know any of that.
Yeah.
So that first year was really encouraging people to call that followed him or send an email. And in the meantime, trying to learn a little bit more. And nothing happened that year, but tried to learn some things through the next year. It rolled around the next year. It got called. He got called in the House, but as soon as it was called, as soon as Floor Leader Steve Rudy called it, there was a lady that yelled out. And she yelled out from excitement that they were calling it. And within seconds, he pulled it because of Robert's Rules of Order. He pulled it because of an outburst, and it never got called again the rest of the session.
That's kind of a weird. Is that kind of a temper tantrum kind of thing?
He didn't want to. He didn't want to call it. And so so then the next year.
Holy smokes! Is that ridiculous or what?
Well, yes, yeah, and so you're sitting like just as a lay person watching this or listening to it, it seems utterly ridiculous. So then the next year, it passes the House, and then goes to the Senate, and gets 2 readings in the Senate, but never gets assigned to a committee. And as you learn about it, it's got to pass through a committee first.
Yeah.
So those 2 readings didn't mean anything until it passed through committee and never got called. So then we thought, okay, let's redo this. So we spent that whole summer going back and forth to Frankfort. It had passed the House, so knock on wood, we felt sort of comfortable there. So we thought, let's meet with as many senators as we can. And so we met with some senators and decided that we even met with House Representative Chris Freeland, who had introduced it several times. And he kind of said to us, I'm 100% supportive, but I think it needs somebody else. Let's give it. I think I've taken it as far as I can take it.
And then a lightning rod got elected.
and then
in a good way. I say that in a good way. She's a firecracker.
Yeah. So we reached out to Susan. Actually, an interesting story was the person that really kind of drafted the bill that I was working with. Called me up and said, I hear this person named Susan Tyler Witten is working with a group that's on a bill similar to this. This is how we need to work around it. Yeah. We need to talk to this person and this person and this person. And I said, why don't we just call her up? And she was like, I don't know if that's the right thing to do. And I said, I've got her husband's phone number. Yeah. So I sent Dwight a message and I said, this is really strange. Can you have your wife call me? Because I need to ask her about something. So she reached out and she said, yeah, someone is talking to me about this. What are your thoughts? And I said, no offense. That is years away from passing. This has been vetted through all these groups. Look into it. And we would love for you to support it, sponsor it. She called me back the next day and she said, you're right. This is very far along. I think we can do something with this. And she took it and ran with it. And we went to House Judiciary to testify there. We went to Senate Judiciary to testify there. And
but she was a rookie state representative, right? When she took this on?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody knows Dwight and Susan, I tell them they're Louisville royalty. I'll share a text message between me and Dwight from the other day. I won't do it on air. It's kind of funny. But yeah, she's a bulldog, man. She doesn't take no for an answer.
No, she's fantastic. And she had, and then as you know, he got to also know some folks.
Yeah.
And so she was also really good friends with Julie Rocky Adams in the Senate, who carried it in the Senate.
She helped us recently too.
And she's fantastic. So we go. And we spent so many times going back. We went to House Judiciary, and then we went to watch each time it got read in the House. And, Ethan has now become a sort of a regular in Frankfort. So he goes up in the House gallery and he's watching. Then we go to the Senate.
Didn't he swing the gavel or something? Setting up there the gavel.
We go to the day that it's got 2 readings. And it's so interesting because you can see it on orders of the day, but that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Like I would see it on orders of the day, even years before, and I'd send a message to Chris.
Get excited.
And I'd be like, hey, they're going to call. And he was like, they're not reading it today. Yeah. Like they know all this stuff behind the scenes. So anyway, we get there, and it just so happens it's that same day that Senator Damon Thayer had passed that shell bill about moving charitable gaming to the horse racing.
Yeah, thanks, Damon.
Same day.
Thank you, Thayer.
So anyway, it was a long day, and this was never about trying to get his name on something because that only really came about after the fact. So it's been a long day. Finally, it gets called for discussion, and Senator Robin Webb gets up. She's opposed to it. Gets up and starts talking about it and looks up at us in the gallery there and says they even brought their puppy prop with them to try to get this passed.
What an evil person.
And I thought,
why did she not want it passed? She abused animals involved in cockfighting or something?
She's from Eastern Kentucky.
Yeah, cockfighting is probably big there.
Probably what else? But anyway, it's just one of those things that I thought.
How can you not want that passed?
And you can't, obviously you can't say anything from the crowd, but even when we went to House Judiciary, Susan and I talked beforehand, and she said there's going to be some things said, and we just have to stick to our script. We don't respond to what anybody has to say.
It's very hard
And
to bite your tongue.
someone stood up, one of the representatives in the House Judiciary said, I support this. I'm going to vote yes. But I just want it known that there are still some crimes against children that are still misdemeanors.
Fix it.
And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, dude, you're the one that can fix it.
Yeah.
You're the only one in this room that can do something about it. And it's not a choice. Like, it's not, okay, this year is going to be animal year and next year we're going to do kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can do them both.
They have all the power in the world to change that, but they're going to complain about it to you.
Complain about it. Yeah.
Idiots. It just makes no sense to me.
And to your point, what really, I think what really kind of put it over the top, is reinforcing to everyone that the people that commit a violent crime against a person, 90% of the time they started with an animal.
Yeah.
90% of serial killers start with an animal. 90% of mass killers started with animals.
Usually with cats, small cats or puppies. Yeah.
And so I think that really helped because it was a way to say, you know what, animals are perceived a little bit different in Kentucky, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't support them. And you know what, if you don't want to vote for it because you don't like animals, vote for it because it's going to make your community safer anyway.
Yeah, they're still defenseless, just like children. I mean, that's the whole reason people go after them.
People will start with, they'll abuse animals.
Yep.
And then then they'll move on to people.
Yep.
And it's always someone very vulnerable.
Yep.
An older person, a disabled person, a child, someone in a domestic violence situation that it makes it very difficult to get out of because they're using the animal as a way to keep that person there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to figure out why that person would say something so shitty to you about bringing your animal prop when you're there to talk about abuse. I mean, what kind of heartless person says something like that? I'm going to look this
and
person
goes on
up.
record saying that.
Yeah,
I mean,
for
like,
sure.
that's stuck with your name now.
Well, she had filed 3 floor amendments to the bill, and we didn't want anything added to it. And she had filed 3 floor amendments. She pulled one of them, wanted them to vote on 2 of them.
What was it? It's okay to burn an animal but not beat them or something? Or you can't hit them with a bat, but you can hit them with a stick? I mean, what kind of
what
moron?
She had to say was, one of the floor amendments was to define a cat or a dog. And so her argument to begin with was a good attorney doesn't need this new bill here. They can go into court and they can explain how the second degree animal cruelty could be used in different ways. But then one of her floor amendments was to define what a cat or a dog is. And I thought, a good attorney can just go right into court and easily define what a cat or dog. It made no sense.
This is why our legal system is jacked up. If that person can stand there and say first, I mean, we're wasting everybody's time with this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's completely insane.
Yeah. I found it in my 4 years of doing it. And now, I sort of thought getting the law passed was going to be the hardest thing. Went into effect July 16th. And now we spend every week we're in a courtroom in Kentucky. I'll drive 3 hours one way for a 2-minute arraignment because it's important to have his face in the courtroom because the dog or the cat that was tortured or abused is not there. Sometimes they've passed away. They're not allowed.
And they can't speak for them.
So wasn't that a big part of the bill was that they needed a face or a story with it really? Yeah,
I really think making a point about the correlation between animal abuse and human abuse and having a story and a face helps.
Yeah.
And so, as we've gone around to different places, I even stopped in Jefferson County and talked to one of the people there and said, I don't want to hurt anything. Is this helping? And she said to me, right or wrong, if a domestic violence victim is in the courtroom, there's going to be harsher punishment. It's just what it is. And so she said, I think by having him in there, you're doing the right thing.
Makes a difference.
And so, we drive around and the hope would be that in a year from now, there's some case law and there's some precedent and we don't have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But until that happens, it's tough. And just last week, there was a case in Scott County, a guy named Christopher Jones who shot the neighbor's cat with a rifle, admitted it on body cam footage, the cat was in such bad shape they had to put it down because it couldn't be saved. Admitted it on body cam footage, and it went to a grand jury, and they did not indict him.
Oh my gosh!
I thought this what this bill was supposed to do. So they're not enforcing the bill.
Well, it's very difficult. It's been very difficult to find prosecutors, county attorneys, Commonwealth attorneys that will use the bill. First of all, this particular person in Scott County did not want to charge him with a felony. It took her, the owner of the cat, hiring her own attorney, who reached out to the county attorney. He still wouldn't up the charges. So she called a representative for Scott County, who reached out to the county attorney, and then they finally upped the charges.
What good is a bill if nobody uses it as the rule of law? I mean, it makes no sense. How these? The whole legal system is insane to me.
You have a perfect excuse if you're the county attorney or Commonwealth attorney. You just say, "This is the law. This is what I got to follow."
Yeah, sorry.
And so
let's stop shooting animals for no reason.
Yeah, there's so this guy's excuse. Whatever was that the cat had put some paw prints on his motorcycle.
I figured that was coming. Yeah.
And so what was interesting was the officer shows up, and she does a really good job of sort of interrogating him on the front porch, and he gets him to admit, I shot the cat with a rifle.
Oh my gosh.
He admits to killing the neighbor's dog a couple years ago that ran onto his property. The only thing he won't admit is she says, where were you? Where was the cat when you shot it? And he pointed out in his yard. And she said, where were you when you shot the cat? And he said, I don't really want to say. That's because
100 yards away.
This is Jeff's opinion. If you saw pictures of the cat, that cat did not move very far after it was shot. That cat was on their property.
Oh my God.
Guarantee it. And he saw the cat. He may have seen some paw prints on us, but there's 100 other ways to handle that situation. First of all, you know whose cat it is. Go talk to him.
Yeah.
Call animal control. Call the police. The last thing is to shoot the cat.
Yeah.
And then you get off, and you don't know what was said. So I know one person that testified in the grand jury, one of the owners of the cat. But I don't know what was said in the grand jury because it's all private. But then once you testify, then you go away. So you don't know what else was said in it. But the guy did not get indicted.
I don't understand. They take all the time in the world, years to get a bill passed, and then nobody is held accountable to it. So it's almost a complete waste of time. But anyway, hopefully we see other bills that go through and different things, and you just don't know what's the use sometimes. Mm-hmm. Hopefully it will put some teeth somewhere. But does it include just domestic animals like cats and dogs, or is it rabbits and just domestic animals?
Dogs, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there was a lot of language that things needed to be just right for it to pass in Kentucky. And, in Kentucky, probably like a lot of other states, those pets are your property. And there's just a lot of folks around the state in rural Kentucky that say, you can't tell me what to do with my property. That's you can't make a law about that, which, I'm fine. If you want to say your cat or your dog is
even though
property,
they're living, breathing things, they're still considered property. I mean, back in the 1800s, women were considered property. So we've come a long way.
Yeah, they're considered property. So my point is, that's fine. Cat or dog is your property. As long as you can distinguish, you're smart enough to distinguish there's a difference between your car and your pet.
I don't know.
Like I can go out.
I'm not sure people are smart enough to determine the difference.
That's sort of the problem, I think. I can go outside and beat the crap out of my car with a baseball bat, and it's not a crime. Yeah. But if I do it to my cat or a dog, it should be a crime.
No, yeah, I agree. Yeah. I don't know. Society's kind of backwards sometimes, I think. But, well, all this, man, took place, and then along comes a movie offer. Is that correct?
Yeah. So there was a lady who runs a production crew out of Los Angeles that sort of saw the story and reached out and said, have you ever thought about like making this a movie, like this feel-good story that is, from where he started and spreading a message of kindness all the way to now he's giving back and helping other animals. And, my thought was, no, I've never like that sounds crazy to me to make a movie. I'm just sitting here in Kentucky trying to help some animals out and trying to get a law passed.
But it would be a great movie, a great story to tell. How all the pieces came together.
So we actually, what I told her was like, you need to make it like a series, because there's so much that there's so many different coincidences and little things that go into his story that you can't put into that short of a time frame. But I would send her information over the course of a month and a half or so, and she wrote the screenplay. And it's not a documentary, but it's true to life. And so there's a couple liberties that she has to take sort of move the story along. But I've read the screenplay. It's really, really good. She took it to the Cannes Film Festival when she was there and had different groups review it, and it came back with like a score of like 99 out of 100. People loved it. And so she brought the film crew to Bardstown last December, and Ethan and I were the grand marshals of the Christmas parade, and they filmed the Christmas parade. And it's sort of people know the story, so no spoiler. It's sort of the ending. They filmed the ending of the movie first, and they'll come back and film the rest of the movie in spring, late spring, early summer. And so we're really hoping it comes out into this year. Yeah, as a theatrical release. There's a group that put some money into it that really wanted to see it in the theaters. So I think it needs to be in the theater. Yeah. But you and I grew up in a time where there was TV series around animals. You ever heard of the show Lassie?
I have. I've never seen it, but I've heard of it. Yeah.
How about Benji?
No.
Old Yeller? That was a movie, though.
No.
A book too, yeah.
No.
How about Flipper?
No.
Never heard of Flipper?
Is that a dolphin or a whale? Or
hey, there you go.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So there was a time when those type of series would take off. Was Lassie a regular TV show? Do you remember?
It was a regular show, yeah.
It's a dog?
Yeah, it was a collie.
Oh.
I don't remember a whole lot about it.
Sorry.
Dog.
She's half our age, brother.
Yeah. That's bad. But yeah, would be. I told her, I said, look, I had never really thought about this before, but if you did, like, you could even do a series. And I said, you could even do a reality show. Yeah. And just have, no offense, just have some cameras just follow him around. Yeah. And it'd be pretty entertaining.
I'm surprised TLC hadn't jumped all over that. Right? Of course, she might, what's her name? Tawny. She might have connections to make that happen at the movie theater.
She might, yeah.
So are they planning it? Have they decided they're going to film it here? Or is it going to be in LA? Or
it should be mostly in and around sort of Bardstown, Louisville area. Okay. At one time, they thought a lot of it was going to need to be filmed in Los Angeles just for financial.
But the landscaping and everything doesn't match up as here in Kentucky.
No. And there's so many now tax incentives for those production companies and movie companies to come to Kentucky.
I've heard Kentucky's kind of dabbling in that a little bit, having more films here.
Personally, I would love, there's going to be obviously several scenes from the Capitol. And I think it would be really, really cool if they could film that actually in the Capitol. Yeah. And I know it's going to be closed for some construction for the next couple of years.
So I was there we went the day they did, was it the signing, and y'all were in the rotunda and you were speaking, and Tawny they were all there. Were they filming some stuff there?
I don't know if she filmed anything for the movie there. I know that there was a young guy there named Austin who has a local company that also helped them film in December. I know he filmed some stuff there, and they may be able to use some of that.
Yeah. I know, just off topic, the 101 Dalmatians movie, right after that movie, everybody was buying Dalmatians. I wonder if Ethan Almighty goes big, everybody will be trying to find that breed
Spanish
of dog.
Mastiffs.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, we did a DNA test on him and through Embark, and he's got 35 or 36 relatives on there, and they're all over the world. They're Argentina, Canada, the Philippines, really all over the world. And most of them, 90% of them are brothers and sisters from other litters. But his mom was also on there.
Which means he probably came from a a really good breeder, I guess, if you can track the DNA on a dog like that.
Yeah. I don't know this for a fact. My guess is he probably came from a litter probably here in Louisville through one of those organizations. But yeah, these are so many on there.
Does the bill crack down on like puppy mills, I guess you can say? Did it do any, I don't know what all's in the bill other than abusing animals, but did it do anything to keep, you see so many people putting animals up for sale on Marketplace and stuff like that. Did it had anything to do with, all right, you can't just start breeding puppies in your backyard because, there's obviously people that abuse dogs to take them, but don't people look for animals for dog fighting? Isn't that still kind of a thing here in Kentucky? Unfortunately,
there's nothing.
My point is, don't they go out and buy these animals and take them to practice fighting the bloodthirsty animals?
Interesting you say that. There's a very interesting case that the guy's first appearance for this particular charge was today in McCracken County. In the past, he's had hundreds of misdemeanors against him. And he is associated
hundreds, and he's still on the streets.
He's associated with the people that run at least a couple different rescues around the country, that he was transporting animals, and allegedly he was supplying these folks with adoptable animals, and they were sending, these are rescues now, sending the animals they didn't think were adoptable to him here. And he had, I think when they went into his premises, he had, I feel like 100 is coming to my head, but at least like 50 kennels stacked on top of one another.
Oh my gosh.
With animals in it. And these animals are defecating and urinating on the animals below them. And none of this was ever cleaned up. So he went on the run, and they found him in Ohio. He's now been officially charged with 19 felonies and 13 misdemeanors. His first appearance was today in McCracken County, but that one there is, they're trying to get him on some federal charges because it's bigger than this one guy abusing these animals.
He's probably selling them as decoy animals across the country for animal fights, dog fights.
Yeah. So these animals, it wouldn't surprise me. I don't know this for a fact, but it wouldn't surprise me if he was probably supplying some of those animals for some dog fighting thing. So the bill doesn't necessarily mention anything about puppy mills or dog fighting. There was a bill. So in Louisville, they enacted an ordinance here in Jefferson County that those puppy stores can't sell puppies anymore.
Right.
So the people that run those puppy stores, and I don't want to say the name of them, or say the wrong name. They filed a bill in Frankfort trying to prevent any other county in Kentucky from enacting the same kind of ordinance that Jefferson County did. And if you don't think that there's money in it, they had 2 or 3 lobbyists, and you know how expensive those are. 2 or 3 lobbyists in Frankfort trying to make sure that this thing passed so that no one else could enact that ordinance, and it did not pass. Then when it didn't pass through committee, then they tried to attach the entire bill as an amendment on another bill. And that didn't pass through.
Which should be completely illegal. Well, the whole bill process we learned is shady to me anyway, being able to attach stuff midstream. But, well, I don't understand people's thought behind that. They don't want what was passed here in outer counties, which tells me these outerline counties are abusing animals. Is cockfighting still legal? Isn't that a big thing still here too?
It's big business.
But it's not legal, yeah.
I think there's a federal law against it.
Is it?
But it's, big business. Yeah.
God, it's horrible. I just can't even.
They cracked down on not too long ago. I think I remember seeing that there was a cockfighting right out here in Valley Station somewhere. A big one
did.
That they cracked
I remember that. Yeah.
But that happens. There's so much of that. Supposedly around the state, you can go to places and they have little arenas that hold 2,000 or 3,000 people.
What is wrong with people to sit and watch animals pull each other apart? What is so entertaining? The Roman Colosseums were done back in the year of Jesus. They they would brutally kill each other. Of course, a lot of times they do that for prisoners.
I mean, I could watch UFC all day, but I don't want to watch animals fight each other.
UFC bothers me sometimes too, when they get into a real bloody mess, especially with the women. I don't think women should be allowed to beat the crap out of each other.
Women fight harder than the men. I
know they do. Brutal. It's rough for me to watch.
But that's their choice. They're choosing to do that. Yeah, they're choosing to do that for millions of dollars, whereas animals don't have the choice.
Part of this Ethan's Law is that these animals don't have a choice. And there's a term, this is what people need to sort of rethink their brain. There's a term in the bill called restraint. Well, initially when people hear restraint, they think leash, collar, tied down, chain, rope, whatever it is. But restraint is, let's say your dog is in a fenced backyard. So it can't get out of that backyard. And it is in the backyard with no food, water, or shelter long enough that it causes health issues for the dog. Then that dog is restrained. It can't leave the backyard to get where it needs to go. In terms of like physically hurting the dog, if you're beating the dog with a bat or some kind of instrument, that more than likely that dog is restrained with something like a rope or something that's within the distance. Otherwise, the dog's going to run away.
Yeah.
If your dog is, if you shoot your dog with a BB gun or gun or rifle, like that case with the cat, the restraint is as far as that bullet will go because that dog or cat can't get away from it.
Yeah.
So you have to sort of rethink when you think of restraint. The word restraint just means that dog cannot get in the car and drive itself to the vet if you have caused it serious health problems.
Which tells me everything you just said is very, very going to be very, very difficult to prove in the court of law because they can't speak for themselves unless there's cameras somewhere. They're not. It's going to be very tough to prove.
Yeah. So you need to show intent and like that the animal can't get. So if you go into that guy's house that had all those animals, there were several of them that had some bad diseases that their mouths were rotting away. Well, that animal is in obvious need of medical care, and it can't take itself to get medical care.
Right.
So, and you can look at it and tell that. So the intent is I'm not going to get that animal care that it needs, and it's restrained because it can't go get it on its own. So there are some ways just by actions that you can prove intent. It's nice if you have someone admitting to it, but just if someone admits to it doesn't mean it's going to even go fall through, just like with this other guy.
So are you adopting 50 new animals today from McCracken County? You need a big farm.
I do. I'd adopt all of them. Yeah.
Of course, in Kentucky, you'd have to watch for the coyotes. They would get to them. You'd have to have it fenced off or something. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when we adopted Ethan, we had 5 dogs and 5 cats at the time. And when we decided this is what we wanted to do, first of all, it needed to work for him and it needed to work for our other animals. We didn't want to bring him into a situation that was no better than what,
Yeah.
So, the first time that I knew that he was coming, there are things that happen in this story. People think I'm crazy, but the first time I'm bringing him to our house, he's sitting in the front seat like a person, like he always does. And I'm talking to him. It's like I'm talking to you, and I'm telling him about our other animals and what they like and what they don't like and their personalities.